Sahana vavatu, Sahanau bhunaktu, Sahaviryang karavavahai, Tejasvina vadhitamastu, Ma vidvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. So the question we may ask is, so having recognized or having come to the teaching of this final reality, what difference does it make to me? It is everywhere, but here I am as an individual who has to deal with things that come and go every day. I'm a practical being. And this reality, now that I'm everywhere, so what? I still got to do my laundry, go shopping, still run out of things and have to order it. And so now this attitude can be self-defeating if one thinks like this. There is a place for it, but I'll show you where it can become self-defeating, because naturally you want to ask yourself the question, right? How do I bring this down into my life, right? This is a natural, spontaneous question that we all have. But I'll show you the part where it becomes a self-defeating question. Suppose you go to a science class and you want to genuinely understand how the universe came, right? How the galaxies form, and how does the first star form, and how do these first gases come together, and how do they start to circumambulate the star. And you want to know the nature of black holes, and how old the world is, the Earth, and what took place for evolution. And you have this aspiration, right? And it's all just presented very well, suppose, and the teacher's doing a good job, and you're sitting down, and at the back of the mind, the question is, yeah, but what difference is this going to make to my life, right? So this is all great data, but what difference is it impacting? How is it impacting my life? And this question, you're unable to let go. And it just keeps on ruminating in the background, right? While the facts are being presented. Now, suppose this question is overpowering, and it's so overpowering because you are the practical person, right? You're the practical woman, practical man. You get things done. Can you, or will you, if this question is constantly in the background, will you actually stick long enough, or allow yourself to stick long enough until enough gets presented, until it can actually start to help you? Will you? If this question keeps on kind of saying, come on, make it practical, make it more relevant to my life, make it more relevant, make it more relevant. In other words, if the person's kind of going through this mode of, extreme, this is the other extreme, right? The extreme of practicality, extreme of make it something that I can live, something that I can just incorporate at the shopping, on the road with friends, then what happens is that the person can become sort of impatient with themselves, and their mind is just focused on one little aspect of life, whereas life is much larger than just practice. So this means that person in the science class has to stay there long enough until they get a chance, or they give their mind a chance to see how this ties deeply into my life. So this means that if the person, right, is understandably so looking for, if I don't see it, it's not useful. This is basically at the level of how animals function. This is like a very functional, right, aspect of animals, but also human beings. So if I stay at this, and it's understandable so, because all life, we are conditioned to think like this. Come on, make it practical for me. Make it useful. I need to see immediate results right now. This is how we are all basically taught, because it is a world where you have to get things done, and there's no way around it. So this means when it comes to Vedanta or any subject matter, you have to give yourself some leeway to stay long enough, not for the sake of the teacher, for the sake of yourself. Because tell me one thing, what good has ever been attained without hard work put behind it? What genuine goodness has ever been attained without a long-term investment of time and energy put into it? Not one thing, right? So this means that, so yes, there is a practical aspect to it, but there is also being kind and gentle with yourself. In reality, right, you really have to be patient with yourself and gentle with yourself, that this is something that this knowledge has to weave its thread. It has to design its network in your mind. It has to percolate throughout your being. It has to shine through your entire personality. It has to, right, come into every facet of your speech, of your thoughts, of your how you present yourself, how you think about yourself, how you talk to people, how you react, how you don't react, how you forgive, how you think about when a challenge comes. You really have to be patient with yourself. And one way that we can help ourselves is through prayer. We can say to, hey, Lord, dear Lord, may this knowledge help me to find its way in all areas of my life. Let me speak this knowledge. Let me see the world through these fresh eyes, through this knowledge. Let me see the person much more than just the person. Let me feel the presence of Ishvara in all things. Let me come to a place where I am a shining example of the Shastra. Let me, be surprised by how many quantum shifts I can actually have in myself. So this means you're having this, right? You're asking for help because you have spent a lifetime, lifetimes with a plural, thinking in this practical mode. I want instant gratification. If it's not here, then I dismiss it. So this means that we need to remind ourselves why I should persist. Well, there are several reasons why one can persist. Because if you look at the limitations of life, life, right, obviously has good parts to it. It has rainbows, sunshine, it has love, it has a lot of great things. So it's not just all suffering, gloom and doom here. This is a kind of a, it's maybe a little bit partial way to look at life. It is, a rainbow of different experiences. But when you really look at it, then you really realize that most of your life is not spent in joy. It's not all joyful. It's most of it is not spent in joy. So this means there's something called fleetingness. It's impermanent. So this means even if you have a lot of great friends and company and students and clients and whatever, and they're really there, any moment they can leave. And right. And what happens is you develop that attachment to them. You thought, I have the best students, I have the best clients, and I'm so grateful. And one moment they can just leave. And that, you realize, wow, even that I was depending upon for my happiness, but that too has now been stripped away from me by Ishvara. Or you can, have kids and they can suddenly surprise you in a very wonderful way. They can accomplish something great. They can make you proud as a parent, but they can equally go the other way. And so like this, everything that we have is really just fleeting. So it's not now just about, oh, I'm not going to do anything because it's all fleeting. It's not going to last. Just means having that objectivity in the background. While it's here, I adore it. It's wonderful, and I'm really grateful that it's in my life. But I also have to recognize it can't last. The way that the world is made is it can't last. And we all have a glimpse of this. We also have a glimpse of insecurity. So every time you get reborn, you as a young person are vulnerable. You don't know very much, and people can tell you anything, and teachers can tell you anything. And this you pick up because you have no defense system. So you just kind of take it personally and you develop these complexes. And these complexes can guide one's life, and they're very hard to get rid of in adulthood. So this means that just by being born alone, right, you're already susceptible to these insecurities that later on become a burden in life. There is, guilt. So, right, you are born empirically as a small person, and you see yourself, I can only remember so much, and these people are better than me. So there's a competition kind of a thing. And right, and then you say, well, then I want to break through this limitation of this small individual. So you go into the world, but you go with a limited amount of knowledge, skill sets. So you make mistakes. And these mistakes cost you peace, they cost you tranquility, they produce shame, they produce embarrassment, they produce guilt. So what is guilt? It is when you do what you wish to do for the sake of, right, relinquishing this sense of limitation that we feel. And in doing so, we make a mistake. And then we go, oh, that was such a foolish thing that I did. So you feel guilty or shameful. So this guilt is, right, commissions, it's in reference to yourself, the commissions and omissions that you've done in reference that you have done. but also other people are in the same position. They also are exactly where you're at, where most of us are, and they too want to generally just break through this limitation. So they too, in their doing, will cross paths with you, and you will be on the receiving end. So this means now somebody lies to you, disrespects you, doesn't give you the right treatment, or maybe you've misinterpreted it, and therefore you don't feel treated well. Somebody sort of just doesn't really appreciate your time, or maybe you have this need for recognition. Not that you're needy, just that sometimes we need, a little bit of, hey, I'm doing a lot here. I just need a little bit of that recognition. So don't look at this as a needy person or it's unhealthy, right? You need some encouragement. But suppose the other person just is not in that mood and they don't give you that encouragement. So, right, so you have to deal with all of these things: guilt, insecurity, hurt, smallness, mortality. So there's this thing in the background, right? I can have a wonderful life, but the truth is, all of it is for what? Die one day, right? So it's amazing, right? I think I was listening to what was it? The Staying Alive. Who's the group who did that? Bee Gees, right? Bee Gees. And one of them, I think, is still alive, and he was being interviewed, and he said that he was very intelligent. He said, you've seen how quickly a person can just have its success, have attainments, have recognition, have fame, and in one moment it gets stripped away, like in that second. And because he was talking about his brothers, who one of them died early from cancer. So, and he's saying that, just keep low key. I like this, what he said. Just keep low key, because in one moment somebody else overtakes you and you're nobody now. So this means if I'm so used to being this high figure, right? Even that you have to then pay a price. This means you're so used to being somebody and somebody overtakes you, and now that identity is taken away right along with it. So all of these things are part of human experience. And this is the price that we pay for being alive one more time. And thereby it's up to you. You can decide to do this again and again and again and again. This is how giving Ishvara is. He says, fine, you can absolutely have a life, and I will, according to your quality of your actions, that's the kind of quality of life you will live. But you can also collapse the highest potential that is given to you. And that is, you can recognize that you are much bigger from this person that has the need to do something, that has the need to be someone. And you can just solve the problem once and for all. And it is so, so, so worth it when you finally do. Now, if you don't think it's worth it, then at least take the word initially. This is called Shraddha, having that initial trust in the words of the scriptures, in the words of the teacher, who says that it is absolutely worth it, even though it's it's kind of a journey that requires you to be very discerning and to be self-reflective, to look at where you're coming from, to be responsible for your actions, to be accountable for your actions. So none of this now, oh, I don't care and just let it go. This has to stop. This at one point has to stop. In fact, this is the art of karma yoga. When a person takes karma yoga, which we will talk about, then the difference is that I no longer can let my likes and dislikes just run wild. Before, they were just running wild. I would do whatever I want. It's my life. I can please myself. The moment you enter this journey, there is a certain responsibility that the person makes to themselves. It's a commitment, like a signature onto one's face. And this signature says that likes and dislikes are completely normal. In fact, look at this. Likes and dislikes, I know Arsha, you had a hand up. Likes and dislikes are what makes you and I express ourselves. It's what makes you contribute your talents in the world. If you didn't have likes and dislikes, what would you do? What kind of a life would it be? It would be a dead life. So intrinsically, likes and dislikes are completely normal. Someone has a like for being a doctor. How many people is that like helping? Suppose you have a like for being a doctor. That's a great thing. And all of us, we need you. Now, can I say get rid of your likes and dislikes when I am the one who's now alive because you helped me because of your like for being a doctor? Can't do that. So this means leave likes and dislikes alone. They're your embellishments when they are directed towards the purpose for a higher good. And when they're directed towards moksha, then the like is, fantastic. In fact, you want to have a like for moksha. When these likes and dislikes become burdens, is we give another name, we put an adjective, we call them binding. So what a binding like and dislike means is it denies you from expressing yourself fully. So this means that I have to have something for my well-being or else, right? So the person convinces themselves that I absolutely have to have this in my life. I've got to have this person. I've got to have my time. I've got to have my coffee. I've got to have my, yeah, right, Carrie, drinking. So is David. I've got to have certain things in my life that absolutely complete me. So when you have this notion that these things complete me and I can't go without them, that becomes your binding like and dislike. In reality, as I said last week, you were completely fine once upon a time when this thing was not in your life. So this means over time I gave my power away and somehow made it so that I think now without this, I will not be a complete human being. But the truth is you are always complete. You are always, right, capable. You are given the capacity to work things out on your own. This is fact. So this means that I have to now look at what is the cost of these binding likes and dislikes and subordinating to them. Just look at the cost. What price am I paying? Well, suppose somebody has a binding like and dislike for too much entertainment, right? So you look at whatever, 5 or 6 hours of Netflix, and you just kind of, say, this is okay. This is the reality. I have a binding, like I have to do this. It's compelling me to do this. And you just look at the price. Well, what is the cost? The cost is it takes away from my self-esteem. It makes me feel a little bit weaker about myself. It takes away from my sense of, it's contradictory to my spiritual search. So you have to look at this and get really in touch. What price are you paying for those things that you think you absolutely need when in actuality you can be totally without them? And this is a fact, right? So, and sometimes we don't even know this because we're so used to constantly having our likes and dislikes pleased that you totally forget about the fact that you can stand on your own 2 feet. I know a friend who she's never been single. She's always been like one boyfriend, another boyfriend, another boyfriend. The moment she breaks up, another boyfriend comes into her life. So she doesn't know what it's like to be single at all, right? And so this means the person doesn't let themselves be to themselves for at least a little bit and recognize, where is my power? In fact, I do have the power to work this out on my own. I really do have that power. And that is what's required in your spiritual search. Because if that takes over, this I can't without somebody else, and you take this into your spiritual journey, what happens then? Oh, I can't attain moksha without the guru. I can't attain moksha without somebody's help. I can't attain. This is a journey that's very personal, right? The guru guides you, the scriptures guide you, but it requires so much accountability, so much self-responsibility, this journey of moksha. So this means that one has to find that power within themselves, because it is a fact. You are given a power to work things out on your own, to kind of change your life around in one instant, to reframe a painful situation, to let go of that bitterness that one's holding on to forgive, to let go. Hey, this person didn't know any better. They were operating from their particular skill set, from their particular mindset. They didn't know any better. And I can't blame them because they're a product of their parents. And they only know what they know. And their parents were a product of those grandparents. And how much access to internet that our grandparents have? Zero, right? And our grandparents are a product of those who were, in world wars and without infrastructure, and life was very hard. So all of this, you start to count these variables, and this lets you get out of this thinking of it's their fault and judgment and labeling and right, and only I am right and everyone else is wrong. So this means, right, the person just includes more things that are actually true. And this makes you more objective about the situation. So this means you become less impulsive. Okay. Therefore, this is the journey of karma yoga, which I don't want to cover now, but it is, right, converting this I can, and I'm not responsible to, I really can't just keep on getting away with it, because it seems pleasant initially, but it just keeps on deepening that impression, that binding like and dislike, and that holds you back from living out your true vision, from living out this vision of oneness. So this means that karma yogi deliberately and intentionally and with commitment says, my new life requires a certain commitment to this journey, and I can't just run wild with all of these desires left and right, which are fine, but I have to start to think about what is the cost of these binding likes and dislikes. Therefore, the person becomes more self-responsible. Verse 18 introduce two concepts, and which are the Sharira, the body, and the Shariri, which is the indweller of the body, Atman. Anta vanta ime deha nityasyokta sharirinaha anashino prameyasya tasmad yudhyasva bharata.
These bodies of the embodied one, the self, which is not subject to change and destruction, and which is not available as an object of knowledge, are said to be subject to end. Therefore, Bharata, or Arjuna, get up and fight.
So he uses the word deha. Deha means body, but I will use sharira. Sharira is an appropriate word. Sharira means that which is subject to disintegration and change and growth and disease, and it's an instrument. So your body is an instrument given to you, and it's given to you to get stuff done. As I said, you can do really whatever you want. The possibilities are endless. But as a karma yogi, as you know, one who's sincere about their journey, it's not so true that you can just do whatever you want. There are certain things that I have to do to help myself. And this sharira is this thing that we are thinking that we are, right? I am this sharira. I am this kind of this instrument localized in time, localized in space, and this is a natural assumption that we all have. And then there is, but who are you? Then the verse continues, you are the Shariri. Shariri. So Sharira is your body, and you are the Shariri. And this is the indweller of the Sharira. This is Atman, the consciousness. And this indweller has this Sharira for a length of time, is blessed with your Sharira for a length of time. And with this Sharira, right, you can, of course, do many things. You can also discover your true indweller. But what happens is, because this Sharira is being given to you from the beginning, naturally, we come to assume that I am, right, this Sharira. In fact, the reason why there is this mistake is because the Sharira is a lot more prominent. It's moving, it's loud, it gives you these tangible experiences. So this is why naturally, right, we miss out on the Shariri, the indweller, consciousness, because consciousness is just the silent, the quote silent. I don't mean silent as in sound, but the non-interrupting, the non-interfering witness of the Sharira. So, and you take this for granted, right? Because it's not interfering. It's always in the, quote, background. So you don't really kind of think much about it. So for that reason, naturally, right, your parents haven't told you about this loud instrument of the Sharira, haven't told you about this, about the knowledge, because nobody suspects it. And we just leave this Shariri alone. And because our Shariri, the indweller, is put in the Sharira, then whatever conditions the Sharira goes through, I go through that, right? I, the indweller, the consciousness, go through that. So if the Sharira gets pain, then, right, pain is okay. But what happens is now, because it's my pain, it becomes 2 times pain. The Sharira goes through old age and goes through disease, because now it's my disease. Disease is okay. That's an empirical thing. But because it's my disease, it becomes 2 times disease. So this means that we literally amplify everything 2 times. Why? Because our eye is placed in that which is supposed to disintegrate, supposed to go through changes. So this means that, right, it's not like the wise person doesn't have pain, right? Their body has pain, of course. Their mind has pain. But then the situation becomes when, right, I have pain. So now it's my thing. And then you add a whole complex about it, what it means and why me, and I'm being punished, and it's my karma, and it's my papam, and I need to get away from this. So you create all of these mental layered complexes on top of the empirical body, empirical brain, empirical mind. You make a big story, and now it's just not twice, sometimes 5 times bigger than it actually is. Somebody says something to you and they said something. That's an empirical fact. And then we follow up. Here's what this means. They don't like me. I'm not good enough. I'm a loser. I'm ugly. And look at this. So how many layers have you added? 4 so far. Now, you know how creative the mind is, right? It's not 4. It's going to continue tomorrow also, another 10, and then another 20. So this is how, right, the person ends up creating a very hard life by putting their identity in that which is supposed to go through pain and pleasure. And thereby, the complexities start to form. So now the solution to this is cognitive discrimination, cognitive distinction. So what this means is that while there is a Sharira given to me for working my things out, for contributing to this in this world, for helping myself, that is a fact, and that is to be acknowledged. While that is the case, it is an instrument, but this instrument is not me. This instrument is given, it's a byproduct of being alive. It's a byproduct of, right, being in this world. And let the instrument do what it has to do. Let the instrument contribute what it has to contribute. Let the instrument finish its allocated time span of 80 years, because it cannot not do that. In fact, if you just sit around doing nothing, all of the unfinished business that is meant to be finished through acting in this world is going to transfer into psychological pain, which is why Krishna explicitly tells to Arjuna, no, going to the Himalaya is not going to help at all, because you have this allocated, right, karma, this allocated slot that is assigned to your livelihood. It's meant to be worked out. And if you can sort of take this and put it on the couch and just sit with it, but the price that you pay is it turns into more self-esteem, insecurity, and it just keeps on now mentally, right, pushing the person down. And what you end up doing is not living out your life. So you were given this body to work out your stuff, and the person thinks they can just get away with it by not doing anything, but actually you end up incurring more damage than if you are to go out and do what is to be done. So this is why Krishna was in chapter 4, say, I think it's chapter 4 or 5, say that karma yoga is actually better than sannyasi. We will see this. Sannyasi is, you need a certain personality to kind of sit down at home and just study your knowledge. But he says that ultimately for most people, karma yoga, going into the world with a mindfulness, with deliberation, with, knowing that everything is a means to an end of moksha, that does a lot better for most people. Okay? Therefore, cognitive distinction is required. I am given this body, and there's nothing right or wrong with it. It's just an instrument to be used. I'm entrusted this instrument for a length of time. Let me use it wisely. If I give you, look at this, if I give you a, suppose, as a friend, I give you my child, my baby, and I say, take care of it. Will you take care of it? David says no. Yeah, there's going to be all into self-knowledge, right? Okay, baby, here's your little bottle. I'm interested in something more. And see, that's the interesting thing, isn't it? Some of us just don't have that baby children samskara, right? You exhausted it maybe in your last life. So you're like, hey, I don't need children. Other women can have children, but I just don't have that need. So this is also a possibility. But suppose I give you a child and I say, please take care of it. I'm going to go to a little retreat. Are you going to take care of it? Oh, hopefully, yes. right? You are entrusted by someone that, right, matters to you. You're entrusted something that, right, you want to take care of it. It's a natural expression of the human heart to take care of things. In that same way, the Lord has given you this body. Exactly the same. Your body is entrusted to you to be taken care of like a temple. So this means when you walk into a temple, you have a certain respect, a reverence for the temple, because you know that this temple is not just some random place. It is a place of divinity. It is where this indweller, this Shariri, lives. To live out one's life fully as it's meant to, I need to give it a clean home, a respectful home, a healthy home. And by doing so, in that sense, I can do what I'm here to do. I can live out my last life, hopefully. I can do my understanding. I can understand the vision of oneness. So this means that you are entrusted this body with which you are listening to, which means there's a certain responsibility how you use your speech, how you use your actions, how you respond, and how you think about those who may be a little bit distorted in their thinking. Okay, so this means I need to now change my approach towards living. It's not just kind of go wild with it anymore. What is the distinction between Sharira, which is the body, and the Shariri, which is Atman?
Shariri is the basis of the Sharira.
Sharira is all outward looking. It's perceiving the outside world. And Shariri is the witness to what Sharira is doing.
The difference between Sharira and Shariri is, well, I start with Shariri is the base or the screen of the movie, where the movie is getting played, and the screen is always having a subtler dimension on which all the experiences appears and disappears. And the movie is a call of, and I'm using an analogy here to portray that the Sharir is like a movie because it comes and goes like a thoughts, emotions, perceptions, sense perceptions, memories, past, future, ideas, including the body.
So what Sanjeev is doing is he's using upamana. Upamana is a comparison. It's used to bring an analogy of something to grasp it. He doesn't mean it literally. He doesn't mean, Atman equals screen, but it is to help us to kind of grasp something that is ungraspable. So it's okay. If you use analogies, that's okay. We know that you don't mean vachyartha. What you really mean is lakshyartha. Vachyartha it's a literal meaning. So if I say to you, Tattvamasi, you are God, and I say it directly, it's called vachyartha, then naturally you're going to be, it's like blasphemy. How can you call yourself all knowledge, all power? You're not all knowledge, all power. Well, I know that, but what I mean is you are Tattvamasi, you are God, I mean, your nature and God's nature and Ishwara's nature is one and the same, which is Sat and Chit. So that is lakshyartha. That's the implied meaning, the deeper meaning. So this is how upamana works. We never mean direct meaning, vachyartha. We always mean lakshyartha, the implied meaning.
I feel Sharir is the impermanent, transient.
Yeah.
And Shariri is permanent, forever.
Okay, I think the Sharira, as I understand, includes not just this physical body, even the subtle body and maybe the causal body.
Yeah. Good.
All three of them become the Sharira. Shariri for me is what I would call maybe Bhagavan, Atma, Paramatma, anything that is beyond all these three. So that is, as somebody said, substratum, or like you said, everything goes still, that existence is there. So that is the Shariri, and everything, all the other bodies, three bodies which we normally know, subtle, causal, and physical, is all Sharira.
Good. And one thing I want to add is that not even, beyond, it's not only just beyond, it is the very thing that you see now is, right, the clay. Is the clay beyond the pot? Is the pot beyond the clay? Is there any question of different dimensions, in any question of beyondness in this case? It's one thing. The way to understand Sharira and Shariri is a Satya Mithya relationship. So this means that Sharira, the body, right, it has its dependence upon something else, the Shariri, the Indweller. The Shariri, no matter what happens to the body, does not affect the Sharira. So this means that I don't have to get away from, right, my Sharira right now. I don't have to get away from it to meet the Shariri. Because wherever the body is, wherever my thought is, that's exactly where I am. And how am I known to myself? As that which illumines experiences, the witness of all things. The witness is who I am. So this means that the relationship between Sharira, the body, and the Shariri, consciousness, is a Satya Mithya relationship. The body cannot exist without consciousness. Whatever happens to the body can break down, the body can die. Consciousness remains as it is, known to you right now.
But Andre, one question. You mentioned that witness. Again, should we say Shariri is the witness? Because it's beyond the witness also, right? Meaning, sorry, beyond is not the right word, but it's not really the witness as well.
Yeah, ultimately it is, see, because we use the word witness in reference to the world. So you don't really call it witness, but in reference to the mind, right, it becomes the witness. It takes on the role of the witness. But the real nature of the witness, the sakshi, is existence of the nature of consciousness. And it is without a second. It is anantam. It is infinite. It is all pervading. But ultimately, who is the final witness? Witness can only be one, which is Sat and Chit. Sharira is like a wave, right? And the Shariri is like the water from the standpoint of the wave. So the water from the standpoint of the wave is the same water that is obtaining the entire ocean. But when that water, which is one, which is the whole thing, obtains into one single wave, then we call that Shariri, or we call it Atman. Okay, so like this. So it's not like now Atman is different from, right, Brahman. It's not like the water in the wave is different from the water of the entire ocean. It's one water. It's H2O wherever you look. But we just give it a name in reference to one individual to help you see that Atman equals Brahman, right? That equals Sat and Chit, the whole reality.
Shariri is more like a life force, which really provides the energy to the body. Like, the body functions because of the Shariri. Yeah, just like the sun provides light.
Okay, so in this case, we're talking about what's called your physiological functions or your pranamaya kosha. So no, Shariri is not life force. It's not energy. It's not anything to do with something that you can measure or chi or it's got nothing to do with that. All of that belongs to Sharira. So life force specifically is Sharira, the body, right? The subtle body, the physical body, the thoughts, the emotions, the desires, the likes and dislikes. And Shariri specifically refers to consciousness. I am.
The Sharira is that which is that as though created by the Shariri, so as to allow us to allow individual experience, and which also includes the ability to have a separate identity as an I. And the Shariri isn't anything other than all of that at any point.
Yeah. Good.
That's as succinct as I could make it. Is that true?
Yeah, so if I understood, if I captured your words, what you're saying is that Sharira allows individuality. It's true. Because of the Sharira, it is as though confining me, the Shariri, who is everywhere right now, as consciousness, as a consciousness principle. Now, when this Sharira comes, when one pot, right, comes, for example, obtains, when one body obtains, then it's almost like, right, I use the analogy of space. It's as though space is now confined to one single Sharira. So in this sense, right, Shariri is the space from the standpoint of one single cup, but actuality that Shariri is everywhere, right? That consciousness is everywhere.
When I was actually having a conversation with a child. The kid asked me a question about what is I? So, and I try to explain in a very layman language or in a very child context. And somewhere I felt it actually I stuck into, because the words which I was using, like I as an existence, and M is a being, so is a being, existence, or existing being, like trying to narrate that whole story into subject object relationship.
Okay.
But the kid was coming back onto the point that it is all the activity of the mind. It was very hard for me, number one, to portray in a very in a language or a pointer where child can grasp it, and as an experiential term, not a conceptual term, because concepts depends upon the maturity of the brain or the maturity of the age. Throw some light on that, please.
I'll defer this to Lorena.
It can not even be an age question, because I had a man at work whose partner died, and he said to me, because he knows I'm into Vedanta, he said to me, "Where's my wife gone?" You know, through his grief. So it doesn't even have to be a question of age. It's just a question of whether your mind's ready to try to grasp these subtle realities, and whether you need more time, more lifetimes to reach that point of subtle understanding of this.
Yeah.
I think that's the difference as well.
Very nice, very nice. So what Lena is saying, it's not even a question of how old you are or how young you are. It's just a question of, is the mind relatively ready? And if the mind's saying it's, if the son or daughter is saying it's just the mind, you know, leave it at that, because the more I try to convince them, the more they will just go back into their original understanding. So you can just only do what you can do, provide some analogies, right? Do your part, come from wisdom, but don't expect them to now grasp it or go, oh, you haven't got it, or try to convince them. They will pick this up. The moment they pick up that you're trying to convince them, you're just doing, you know, the opposite to what you really want. So this is why when we teach the Gita for kids, we keep it very simple: values in life, how to live a good life, you know, how to, the importance of giving, the importance of doing the right thing. And it's not about doing the right thing, but it comes back onto you, you know, the pain comes back onto you. And we show them, right, what is it that makes you happy? And then they say, well, you know, I like to play computer games, makes you happy. And then you say, well, why do you like to play computer games? Well, I'm just so immersed. So you lose yourself, you forget about all of your problems. You forget about all of your life problems of the mind. All of that just temporarily goes away, and you're totally immersed in this game. And then you can maybe go from that there. You can say, so this means what you really want in that state of happiness or game is just to be free of your mind. And then you can let them think about what that really means, right? So now, to take it into philosophical concepts, in my experience, it doesn't work well at all. It may work, right? I don't know how advanced the child is, like Nachiketa, right, from Katha Upanishad, right? He's 12 years old, and he's asking questions to Lord Yama. What's the truth of life? So like Lorena says, you have to be patient and, right, sometimes scale down your language and let them think how they want to think, because life will teach them enough experiences to start to relinquish those rigid ideas. No, it is the mind and it's not anything else. So you have to give them some time to, and the intellect's still developing, right? It's still, they say intellect develops by the time you're 25. Until then, it's not able to fully grasp these ideas.
Can it be applicable to the adult as well, like person who's just stepping into this dimension, who's a seeker, actually, who wants to know what is I?
Yeah.
And if it is not the activity of the brain, it is because as a conceptual level, he can understand or she can understand, but on an experiential level, it's a bit of like bit of like a contradiction of a brain neural activity versus consciousness. So, so is that same applicable to an adult as well?
Exactly the same. Exactly. In fact, we are like little children in grown up bodies. You know, let different characters come into their life and let them think about this knowledge. And in fact, eventually they will come to the right teaching. So patience, whether they're an adult or a child, right? You have to, your duty is to change what level, where they're at, and you adjust your language there, but not go along with them, but right, help them look at it from a different standpoint, a slightly different standpoint. So this means you have to be discerning where they're coming from. My own teacher does this to me every week, right? I say things and I go, oh my God, you know, I feel like a fool. Really, I feel like a fool for saying it the way that I did. And she's always got a better way of saying it. And then I obviously don't feel very well about it, but I think about it later on. And every time I think about it, it helps me to speak and to explain it much better. Because sometimes we know things, don't we? We know them really well. By the time it comes out through the mouth, there's a discord. So this means there's a lack of integrity in your personality. And this lack of integrity means my knowledge isn't as firm as I would like it to be, but it's becoming firmer and firmer and firmer. And how do you make it firmer and firmer? Continue the conversation, just continue the engagement, which is why we're having an engagement now. It's a simple question. What is a Sharira, Shariri? And you see how the conversation can really help us out. We open our mouths and we see where we stand. So this is how the teaching takes place. Otherwise, I can go to verse 19. I don't even know what you understood about Sharira, Shariri. And then we just sort of assume, yeah, I understand. I understand. Move on. Next, I understand.
You can have a Shariri without a Sharira. You can't have a Sharira without a Shariri.
Yeah, exactly. Good. So just like you can have a pot without, you can have a clay without a pot, but you can't have a pot without the clay. Okay? Because it's a Satya Mithya relationship. Good.
Subject object.
Yeah, subject object. It's a different teaching now if you use subject and object. What I've been describing so far is the Satya Mithya relationship between you and your body. Wherever your body is, that's exactly where you are. That's exactly where consciousness is, because as we said last week, everything resolves into intelligence. Everything is obtaining. All of these things that you see are just manifestations of intelligence. The voice is just intelligence. Your brain is just made out of intelligence. Particle is made out of intelligence. The whole thing, the whole universe is an appearance of intelligence. And it's just like in your dream, right? What is your dream made of? Have you ever thought about it? What is your dream made of? Your dream material?
I guess nothing.
Yeah. Think about it. It's just
an appearance. Right?
It's concepts, isn't it? Your dream is just concepts. But how can a concept be hard? Because you're actually walking on hard material. You're punching hard walls in your dream. So concepts are transferring themselves or converting themselves as a wall with certain laws and orders, which you're unable to break. And it's giving you an impression that it's a totally real world. And yet the whole thing is just concepts. And those concepts have no reality without you, the conscious being. So ultimately, even concepts, intelligence resolves into the conscious being. And that one being, which is Satyachit, when it obtains in one single character, we then call it an indweller, a Shariri. And that is your real nature, Atman.
Got it. Thank you.
Verse 19. Ya enam veti hantaram, yaschainam manyate hatam, ubhau tau navijanitaha, nayam hantina hanyate.
One who thinks this self to be the killer and the one who thinks of it as the killed, both do not know. This self does not kill, nor is it killed.
Thank you, Bhuvana. Hantaram is the killer. It stands for the doer. So the doer, talker, inquirer, walker, talker, thinker, and hantam is the killed. So killed stands for the enjoyer and the sufferer. So your mind is designed to return back to its reality. Your mind will not stand for limitation. it's a program that's built into every human being called dharma. And part of this dharma is to keep on making you seek for your real nature. And you will not stop no matter what. This is why someone can just go on a spiritual journey forever. They just don't want to, even if they get disappointed and, right, kind of something happens, you still will move on to the next teacher. You just won't stop. Now, because you cannot stand your limitations owing to your mind, what you and I will do is we will go into the world and we will try to relieve ourselves from the sense of inadequacy, sense of incompleteness. And we will do that to our best of our abilities. Sometimes we will, right, be educated, depends on how much you know, how much you don't know, and you will do the right things naturally. So in your pursuit to drop this sense of limitation, inadequacy, incompleteness, I'm not good enough, I'm a nobody, all of this I want to get rid of. So I go into the world and I do good things. I contribute, I become someone, a politician, a CEO, a mother, a father, a teacher, someone that, a therapist, someone that helps clients, and you help yourself through being something in this world. Wonderful. However, it can go the other way too. My desperation for connection to the world, because connection is the reality, all that is here is Ishvara. But the moment that connection gets lost, it becomes a desperation. Now I become desperate to connect to something, to someone, to receive some love, to receive some acknowledgement, to be seen, to be heard. It becomes such a strong urge that the person will go through the other extreme and they will start to disregard this inherent program of dharma, of what is to be done. And they will start to lie little by little, lie into the second lie, into the third lie, and then do some bad deal, and now that becomes easier, and then you will do a worse deal. And so the person, in the name of freedom, will do whatever they can just to reconnect with something bigger than this meat, this thought that is just pulling them down constantly. So this means that karta, right, the killer, will keep on, right, doing things in this world, and that will keep giving you results that are keeping with the types of actions that you do, and that will create a quality of life that you live. However, not only you are doing that, everyone else is also doing that, because the mind of a human being is inculcated with this program. I cannot stand my smallness. So others will also pursue the world to get rid of the smallness. And you are part of this world. So sometimes you will intersect with their own attempts to free themselves. They will want to free themselves through connection, through music, through loud music, through robbing somebody's house. That is the fastest way to kind of feel like I am, got some control, through punching, through bullying, through insults, through judgments, through saying how you're not good enough, through all sorts of things, and good things too, charity, through doing good works, through cleaning up the oceans, through cleaning up the beaches, through social reform. All of these things you are part of, and sometimes you happen to be intersecting their path to freedom, and that also ends up affecting you. So not only are your attempts to free yourself affecting other people, but other people's attempts to free themselves are affecting you. And now you have two options. You can either, if they end up hurting you, you can either hold and nurse that resentment, and you can say, I'm going to kill them. I'm going to make them become the killed. I'm going to be the killer, and I'm going to make them become the killed, have them have the suffering. Or you can understand that everyone is pushed by this program that I want to free myself, but few people know how to go about doing it in the right way, except through immediate gratification techniques. And thereby you can come to a place of forgiveness. You can say that this person is just, right, moved by this pressure, bottled up pressure that wants to come out into the world for their own well-being. They don't know any better way how to pursue it except to inflict some damage, to do something that is not wise, and thereby you can relinquish this hatred, this disregard for other people who are just, you know, innocently trying to free themselves from this sense of limitation. So in this way, you can then come to understand that I, as a doer, is fine. Everyone is a doer. This is fine. There's no problem with being a doer. In fact, being a doer, you're given a privilege of this human intellect, human capacity, with which you can collapse the highest form of doership, which is to come to the right teaching, to stay long enough to help yourself to understand how does this, right? How do all things play out, the connections, the web. And you can say, with this instrument, I want to understand my real nature. I want to free myself permanently using the right means. Now, in doing so, others can infringe upon that pursuit. They can, you know, provide, you know, a non-conducive environment, or, you know, because killers are out there, right? The doers are out there, and they want to just help themselves. So now you feel a little bit stuck, like I feel a little bit limited, I cannot move forward. So you have to now think, how do I protect myself in my pursuit for freedom without being completely dismissive? And you can make some choices. You can say, well, I can become, first step, accommodative. To be accommodative means you come to understand, where is this person coming from? And as I said, they have a certain view of the world, and this, right, they're helping themselves through whatever means is necessary. And you can see, okay, so this person has ideas, and they're got their own conditionings, their own, you know, likes and dislikes, and they may not be compatible with my own. So what I can do is I can firstly understand for my own protection, because if you don't understand, what happens? The mind turns it into disregard, dismissing, into judgment, into opinion. So first thing, I come to understand, where is this person coming from? Now, second of all, if they're closer to you, then what you can do is try to help them, try to make them see a little bit from a different, a higher perspective, that you know, you have a certain pursuit for freedom, and you need your right, you need your freedom, you need your time, you need your education. If that doesn't help, then right, you have to ask yourself, then what now? Well, you can create some distance, even in a conversation, right? What I mean distance is not like physical distance, like moving completely, because sometimes that's not possible. But even if, right, in a conversation, there's a certain topic that gets touched, then you can say, I don't wish to go this way, right? This, I'm going to create some distance. This, I put some boundaries there. So distance doesn't mean this like dismissal, like total dismissal. It just means, where am I willing to go and where am I not willing to go? But you can still be in a conversation like any other time. So this means throughout this journey of being a doer and an enjoyer, which is part of the human experience, and protecting your freedom to pursue what is important for you, you also have to understand, what is the relationship between this doer enjoyer and my real nature, Atman. The relationship is of Satya and Mithya. So what this means is that while the doer and enjoyer is a effect, it's a byproduct of this world, and you happen to be wearing one, the Atman has to be happens to be wearing one body. Let the body do what it's meant to do, because it is not there as an obstruction when it's used to discover your nature. Then it's no longer a burden. It's a blessing. It's a gift. So as long as my body is there, right, understood to be a vehicle to recognize my full nature, to develop my relationship with Ishvara, then it's not a burden at all. It's actually a blessing. It's like, thank God I've got this body to use it for what it was meant to do. So while participating in this world, the relationship between my real self and the body-mind is a Satya-Mithya relationship. This means whatever happens to this body, to this doer and enjoyer, whether there's a killing or whether I'm the killed, right? My intrinsic nature is never tainted by whatever happens to the body. It's never contaminated. It doesn't undergo the killing or the being the killer or the killed. All of that belongs to this one body and mind. Who am I? I am the light in whose presence this drama of the hero and villain keeps on coming and going upon the screen of one consciousness. And that screen, as someone said here, is my real nature. So whatever happens, whether the hero kills the villain or the villain kills the hero, all of this is just one screen, right? One drama of appearances of the story of life happening on one screen. And I'm that screen which doesn't get wet, which doesn't get dirty, which doesn't take on the punya papam of anyone's actions, whether your own bodies or somebody else's body. You are that pure, eternal substratum, that base upon which existence takes place. So this means besides just doing things, I also remind myself, what is my relationship to this door? What is my Atma's relationship to this door? Which means that knowing this, you can start to do things with a lot more relaxation, because you know that no matter what your body does, what your mind thinks, it doesn't touch you, it doesn't taint you. So this means, ironically, it doesn't negate you from doing anything, rather makes you more participatory in this world with a greater sense of ease. And as we will see in the next verse, this is what Krishna is saying to Arjuna. Don't have to worry about, going to hell or, going to heaven, because your real nature is Atma. And the real nature of these soldiers is also Atma. And there's nothing that you can do to incur, right, the sin that you think you're going to incur. Just do what is to be done, because that is the duty that is assigned to your particular body and mind. And while you're doing, understand that your nature remains pristine, remains pure. And while it does, it's like with the movie screen. You and I are gonna, sit down at a movie, and we all get immersed in this movie, don't we? We all kind of totally get, we talk about the movie, and we get, we cry with the movie pictures, all about the movie. And yet, right, what's the most important factor there? The screen. The screen, which is kind of like boring. Oh, what's there to say about the screen? And yet it is the most important, which is why we miss it. Like, who needs awareness? Who needs consciousness? So this means one has to deliberately interrupt that cycle and say, there is something about now that is my real self. Next verse, we will talk about what is the nature of Atma.
Krishna is reminding Arjuna, Krishna is reminding all of us to remove that ownership and authorship in our actions if we have to perform our duty diligently.
Yeah, exactly. So he's not saying be motivated to fight, Arjuna, because you're Atman. He's not saying that, because Atman is not a person who has something to lose or gain. Atman is just the awareness in whose presence this whole show is taking place. And your body is made to do what it was made to do. This is your duty, your personal duty. So it's like, right, suppose you say, I'm not going to do my duty. That's like your arm right now. It's part of the whole system. And your arm says, I'm not going to do what I want to do. I'm just going to let the other arm do all of the work. Well, how long is the arm going to get away with that? Because life eventually is going to force this arm to lift itself, to pick something up. And not only that, if this arm just rests, which is part of the whole system, then it starts to lose muscle, it starts to be weaker, it starts to lose skills. And when life eventually forces this arm to act, now it's so sloppy, and it starts to regret all of those moments of escape that it thought it could have, enjoyed, while it lets the world do everything else. So this arm, end of the day, cannot just rest. It is part of this network, and it's made to do and fulfill its own part. And so what Krishna wants to say is that, right, this arm doesn't have to philosophize, oh, my real nature is Atma. There's still an arm there. The arm, at the level of the arm, you still got to do what you got to do. But don't lose sight of your real nature. Purnamadav, Purnamidam, Purnat, Purnamudachyate, Purnasya, Purnamadaya, Purnam Eva Avashishyate. Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti.